Before I dive into the meat of this discussion, please note that yes, some things I mention will be constructive criticism against Cedar Point, but it's only my opinion coming from a guy who doesn't know all the ins and outs of the park, because I don't work there and never have. I'm a huge fan of Cedar Point. I've already been there multiple times this year and hope to squeeze in another visit or two before the end of the season. Alright, with that said, let's get to the main topic of the video, or one of the topics of this video. Pandemic regulations. A topic that many of us don't want to discuss, but unfortunately it's here and we have to deal with it. Just like every other amusement park on the planet, Cedar Point was thrown a curveball that left them attempting to salvage the 2020 operating season. Many parks in the United States didn't open or reopen until late June, early July. So for the northeastern states, that means there are only a few months left at best to operate their park for this year. Cedar Point, overall, has done a great job at keeping their park in compliance with the new pandemic guidelines. By requiring a temperature check before entering, a reservation system, though that is no longer needed, sanitizing high touch points in the park, including ride restraints and handrails, throughout the day, and doing their best to keep guests distanced from each other. I knew before visiting this year that ride operations were going to be slower than normal, but I wasn't expecting just how slow some of the operations would be. Valraven was running extra slow, especially with sanitizing every train every 30 minutes. The loading and unloading process is quite a bit more tedious by having guests disembark by row. I understand that this was for social distancing, but honestly it really doesn't help. If everyone were to disembark at the same time, you would get close to others for maybe a few seconds at most. In fact, even with the spacing in the queues, you still come in contact with other guests longer than you would simply walking off the train. With that said, I know the park is simply trying to follow social distancing guidelines, so they must do their best to keep everybody 6 feet away from each other, so I gotta give Cedar Point props for doing their best. Another initiative the park has implemented is their ride access cards. So basically, in order to get in line for a few of their major attractions, you have to pick up an access card near the entrance of the ride. The card has a return time printed on it in hourly intervals, so you can come back and stand in line with a less crowded queue. It sounds great on paper, but in fact it creates a whole new set of problems. The roller coasters that require the access passes are Millennium Force, Top Thrill Dragster, Maverick, and Steel Vengeance. So in order to obtain an access pass, you have to run over to the entrance of the ride and grab a card. That is if you are lucky enough to get one, because they do not distribute very many. If you have enough time, you'll want to hike, meaning run, over to another attraction and hopefully get another access card before they run out. The park distributes these passes 2 times a day, first at 11 a.m. and then second round at 3:30 p.m., though that obviously has changed with the new park hours. I believe it's 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the rest of the season. The real losers for this system would be the locals. If you are just visiting your home park for a few hours, say after work, you might not be able to get into the park until, say, 4 p.m. By that time, most likely every single access pass will be gone, ensuring that you will not be able to ride Cedar Point's 4 main coasters. When comparing Cedar Point to Kings Island with how they both have handled these new regulations, I would argue that Kings Island has done a slightly better job. I felt that their team was a little bit more on point with their cleaning processes, meaning Kings Island will have one staff member spray down the ride while another follows behind to wipe it out. Cedar Point, for the majority of their coasters, would spray down a train, then dispatch it, letting the wind dry the coaster. This obviously takes up more time than someone simply wiping down the seats. Personally, I feel bad for Cedar Point because they have been put into an impossible situation. They are trying their best to create a safe environment for their guests, but with new policies and procedures being implemented, and not a lot of time given to test these policies and procedures in real life, not just on paper, it's almost always going to fail. In this situation regarding their access passes, Cedar Point would probably get railed on if they allowed their coaster queues to fill up more and guests would complain that the lines aren't properly socially distanced. However, in reality, guests are still standing in line, they're just standing in line outside of the ride's queue in order to get an access card, so that they can go stand in line within the ride's queue in order to ride the ride. In the end, let's just hope this pandemic becomes a thing of the past as we move into the 2021 season. Okay, on to more exciting topics. Cedar Point has one of the best collections of roller coasters on the planet. They have consistently led the pack with the latest and greatest attractions. Cedar Point is known for building the tallest and fastest coasters out there. Even their latest addition, Steel Vengeance, shattered many records including most airtime. If you visit Cedar Point on a typical day, without purchasing a Fast Lane Pass, well actually the Fast Lane Plus, you would be hard-pressed to squeeze in a ride on all of their top 5 coasters, which I would say are Steel Vengeance, Maverick, Top Thrill Dragster, Millennium Force, and Valraven, let alone snag rides on every coaster in the park. It is possible to get on all the coasters in one day without the pass. I mean, I have done it before if you get lucky and hit it on a slow day. But just be warned that your entire day will be spent in line with little to no time available to enjoy some of the other things at the park, like sitting down for a meal or using the restroom. So what could the park do to remedy this situation? Well, they could build more fantastic coasters, which would spread the crowd around a little more. We did see how Steel Vengeance helped reduce the line for Maverick, changing it from an average 2-hour wait to more of a 60-minute wait, but as attendance continues to climb, so will the ride wait times. I know that some of their roller coasters were designed to be mega capacity machines, but they didn't quite live up to their lofty expectations. As much as I would like to see some crazy single rail coaster, an access coaster, and even some insane 600-foot creation, whatever it is, capacity should be one of Cedar Point's major priorities. A coaster that can hit 2,000 riders per hour would actually be ideal, though that would be a challenging feat. I think it's still a real possibility. Whatever their next major attraction is, be it a dark ride or another roller coaster, it needs to be a high-capacity, people-eating machine. Speaking of dark rides, let's discuss Cedar Point's Flat Ride collection. One aspect that I think is holding Cedar Point back from being the theme park tour de force is their flat ride collection. And by that, I mean the insane amount of flat rides this park has to offer. Beyond the coasters, there are plenty of attractions for guests to enjoy. However, like any other amusement park, these are very unoriginal attractions that you might even find at your local carnival. Cedar Point practically has no major attractions when you take their roller coasters out of the equation, though I can see an argument for Max Air, Skyhawk, Power Tower, and Windseeker. I know what you're thinking. Derek, this is a roller coaster park. You know, it's the coaster capital of the world. Well, if you take a look at what the park has been working on, they are trying to make this a multi-day resort destination. And in order to become a place that guests will want to spend a few days, they need to diversify their collection of attractions. Cedar Point has advanced a few major steps in this direction by rebranding and updating their water park. The addition of Forbidden Frontier is something different that will entice multi-day guests and families. 2020 was also supposed to introduce a new attraction, a boat ride transportation attraction with theming. It's not a dark ride, but it's a step in the right direction. Cedar Point desperately needs a good dark ride attraction, something that will entice everyone. Nothing niche like Forbidden Frontier, but something that would even pull some thrill seekers away from their coasters for a bit. Be it a shooter interaction ride or an all-encompassing story-driven attraction, which is the latter is what I think they really need. Maybe a dark ride that kind of tells the story of Frontier Town, pulling together all the missing plot points that are floating around with Maverick and Steel Vengeance. From what I hear, the backstory to these two roller coasters is rather in-depth, so a dark ride that flushes out the story would be fantastic. Finally, the last topic I want to discuss is pricing. When you take a look at their ticket price, Cedar Point looks to be a fantastic deal. Daily tickets run about $50 or less, and that's not including all the deals you can find that throw in a drink pass, parking, or meal. Parking is typical at $20. Food pricing varies. I saw some items that felt they were about average, but some items seemed way overpriced. Kara and I paid $8 for a single corn dog, which is kind of insane. Anyways, their pricing seems to be on par with most theme parks. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to do everything, chances are that's not going to happen without getting a Fast Lane Pass, well, actually the Fast Lane Plus. Depending on the day you visit, you'll pay anywhere from $90 to $150 to skip the majority of the lines in the park. Now your $50 visit has suddenly turned into a $200 visit. Personally, unless you aren't looking to hit up every coaster, the Fast Lane Plus is the only way to do Cedar Point. I mean, you get to skip the lines and ride your favorite roller coasters multiple times. The last time I got the pass, Steel Vengeance was pushing 3-hour wait times, but with the pass, I was on in 15 minutes. Val Raven was about a 2-hour wait, and I was able to walk right on. Now, with spending about $200 a day, this is starting to sound like Disney prices, which it's pretty close. The biggest question here, though, isn't how much money you spend, but is it worth the price tag? Honestly, yes. I am more than willing to spend the $200 at Cedar Point when it gets me access to every major attraction in the park with little to no wait. Even Disney can't do that at a $200 mark. Of course, we are comparing apples to oranges. Cedar Point and Disney aren't really the same kind of thing. Yeah, they're theme parks / amusement parks, but they have a very different agenda. Speaking of agendas, going back to our dark ride, flat ride discussion, would building a dark ride attraction at Cedar Point detract from the overall theme, which is roller coasters? No, I don't think it would. Even Disney builds attractions that aren't completely all immersive. Just take a look at some of their flat rides. Sure, they're highly themed, but not the typical e-ticket dark ride attraction that Disney is mostly known for. The future of Cedar Point looks bright, and I can't wait to see what Cedar Fair decides to do with this property. Which direction will they take? Is it more and more coasters, or will see their ride collection start to diversify to attract a wider range of audience? Time will tell, and I can't wait to find out. To wrap things up, let me reiterate my points. Number 1, 2020 sucks, need I say more? Number 2, Cedar Point should consider building more high-capacity attractions. Number 3, the case for a dark ride. Number 4, to get the complete Cedar Point experience, expect to pay near Disney prices, but just like Disney, it's worth the price tag. Thank you for watching today's video. Hopefully I didn't trigger too many people. Let me know what you think of this amazing park in the comments below. If you enjoy this content, help me out by clicking on that like button. As always, please subscribe so you won't miss out on more great content coming your way by Xscreamthrills.